Welcome everyone to this Q&A session for the beautiful, poetic, autobiographical documentary film This Day Won't Last by the Tunisian filmmaker and activist Mouaad el Salem. It's an honor and a privilege to participate in the festival as a whole and to be assigned the beautiful task of dialoguing with Mouaad about the film. Hello, Mouaad, how are you?
Hello, I'm so great, thank you.
Great, it's great to have you, and thank you for allowing us and sharing with us this, allowing us the privilege to see the film and the pleasure of it and sharing it with us. Before we start, I just want to tell everyone that Mouaad el Salem is a pseudonym that Mouaad uses to protect his identity for his own safety. And this is the reason we also do not have him on camera, so we will just be hearing his voice. And I think that it's a very sobering fact that this is the case, and it's more than a reminder of the a reality, the unsafe reality for millions of queer people around the world. And just a note on the name that Mouaad chose for himself. Mouaad in Arabic means the recurring, and as-salam means peace. And it's very again, it's a very intentional and telling choice that he chose a name about how this process, this activism, is recurring. It happens on a daily basis, and it's intentional. And how what's the biggest aim behind it is peace for everyone. So welcome again, Mouaad, and it's a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Riham.
Okay, so I just have, I have so many questions, but I'm going to try and curb my enthusiasm, to quote one of my favorite TV shows, and talk, you know, precisely and concisely about some aspects of your film before we open the floor to questions. So first of all, Mouaad, would you tell us the process of how did you come to produce this film, and the process,
Well,
and how long it took you?
okay, all that it started before 3 years ago, I think. I was with my cousin. She was in my home. In this period, I was too far from my family because uh, I live in a smaller city. I leave the city and I go to the capital. Then I invited my cousin. She came to my house. Then we start talking about LGBTQ and the situation between Tunisia and Europe and all. And I told her that I really love cinema, and I really want something. I really, it's a dream for me to do a film who's talking about the situation in Tunisia, the LGBTQ situation in Tunisia, and all that. It started just with a simple conversation, you know. It wasn't in our program to do this film. It was just like a dream, but after years, it became true, you know.
Okay, so one of the things that that struck me throughout watching the film was, of course, the film is autobiographical, and it's about you, and it's you feature in the film, but we cannot see your face for reasons that I have just pointed out. And one of the things that is that I think the most beautiful about the film is the use of the imagery, photographs, whether still shots or filming, your living space, the city that you live in. And I was wondering, what came first? Did the narrative come first, or did you have the images and you worked around them?
It was it how can it was, you know, I'm this kind of person who, when I go whatever, for example, to cemetery or in my home, I like just to open my camera to show my space. So it was just like this, you know. all this film, it was يعني spontaneous يعني.
uh, continuing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was just okay. باش سأحاول أتحدث العربية الآن. أنت سؤالك كان يعني كيف كانت يعني كيف بدأت هذا الفيلم ولا؟
بنيت الفيلم ازاي؟ يعني الصور جت الاول ولا السرديه والتعليق الصوتي والى اخره؟
الصور جت الأول، بعدين الصوت.
مم.
والصور كانت يعني كما قلت لك، الصور كانت يعني لما مثلا نكون في مكان أنا نرتاح فيه، نفتح الكاميرا ونصور. أي مكان أنا نرتاح فيه نفتح يعني الكاميرا وأخذ صور فقط. لكن بعدين جت الصوت. والصوت هو أصلا كان يعني عبارة عن رسائل صوتية بيني وبين قريبتي. وهي لأنها تعرف كل الظروف، تعرف كل شيء. هي اللي حاولت تجمع كل الصور والصوت بطريقتها.
Okay, so just to translate what Mouaad said is that he had the images first, and then he constructed the film around the images, and the voiceover that we hear were actually voice recordings, voice messages that he had between him and his cousin, who is his collaborator on the production and the editing of the film. And she was the one who helped him put it together. So it was truly a labor of love. One other thing that also struck me in the film, Mouaad, are there are certain themes that run throughout the film. So there's the theme of the dream, and the
Yeah.
theme of the grave, and death and fear. You talk about these things a lot. Can you elaborate? Can you talk to us more about them and how they connect to your life, both as an artist and as an activist?
Well, when you are a gay in Tunisia, and with all this with 2230. سأتحدث العربية لأني حس روحي نسيت الإنجليزي.
ولا يهمك، تفضل.
لأنه أنت لما تكون مثلي في دولة عربية، المجتمع والعادات والتقاليد ما يخليكش تفكر بطريقة إيجابية، يخليك أكثر تفكر بالموت. لأنه دائما تكون تحت ضغط، ودائما تكون تحت التهديد وتحت الخوف. إما الخوف من العائلة، إما الخوف من القوانين، إما الخوف من المجتمع. يعني في ما فيش حتى حاجة تخليك رغم إنك تعطي ما عندك للدفاع وكل شيء، لكن دائما هناك الخوف. لأنه مش راح تلاقي أي شخص يحميك إذا وقعت في مشكل. لا الدولة راح تحميك، لا العائلة راح تحميك. لأنه بالنسبة للعائلة هذا الشيء هو عار، معناها الشيم. فهمت؟ هذا يعني هذاك علاش ديما أصلا تفكر في الموت، وتقول الموت اللي هو أحسن حل. كي باش تموت باش ترتاح، يعني لما تموت راح ترتاح. فهمت عليا؟
وانت شخصيا فكرت في الانتحار قبل كده؟
عملت عمليتين انتحار أصلا.
Okay. Okay, so what in Mouaad's response to the question was that living as a queer individual in his context, in a homophobic society with a law that criminalizes homosexuality, means that a person lives in constant fear of the family, for which having a gay son is a source of shame. And by the way, Mouaad is not out to his family. And fear of the society, of that stigma, and also fear of the state or the law, because he and other queer people could easily be arrested and put in prison. And this living in constant fear becomes so taxing that it can push people easily to think of death. And Mouaad has opened up to us and confided in us, if you like, that he tried to take his own life twice. And in this vein, both Mouaad and me would like to pay tribute to the Egyptian queer feminist activist, the late Sarah Hagazi, who was in exile in Canada and died by suicide in last June. So this is a reality of many queer individuals, and this is why the themes of the grave and fear are rife in his film, but also the theme of the dream, that this is the salvation, is to a dream of a better world, a dream of a more just reality. Another question that I have for you, Mouaad, is we have a beautiful metaphor. You talk about the fig tree, شجرة التين, that was uprooted to be replanted in a more beautiful area, in the garden of a swanky hotel, and after a month it died. And you use this metaphor to talk about the compelling thought you had of migrating, of leaving Tunisia and seeking asylum or refuge elsewhere. But you show us beautifully this fight, this internal fight you have, that you don't want to leave Tunisia, you don't want to leave your family. And I was wondering about if you could elaborate more on that, and if you could talk to us about this dream of living elsewhere in the West, in the global North, where it might be more a safer context for a queer person. And is this actually a reality? Do you think that this is the case? And what do you think of, did you have in mind a Western audience when you were making the film, and how you wanted to show them that seeking refuge is not the easiest idea that comes to an oppressed person's mind, and there's so much more to weigh and battle with?
اوكي، انت السؤال متاعك كان على شجرة التين وعلى اللجوء وعلى الشارع. اوكي،
أيوة.
انا بالنسبة لي هذه قضية اني عندي مازلت ما نجمش اني نغادر تونس اوتون كو لوا دي 130 مازال موجود اولا. ثانيا اني بالنسبة لي نحس اللي الهروب ماهوش الحل. على خاطر مثلا اذا كان اني نهرب، مثلا اذا انا يعني هربت والاكتيفيست الاخرين يهربوا، اي شخص يبدا يدافع بعد يهرب، ماناش باش لن نصل لاي شيء. فهمت؟ واني بالنسبه لي يمكن نختار، تعرف وقتاش نجم اني مثلا نفكر في اللجوء، كيف نولي كيف نتعب من الدفاع. اني مازال عندي القوه، اللي اني مازلت نعرف روحي مازال عندي القوه، يعني لسه عندي القوه حتى ادافع. عشان هذا مشان هيك انا راح مازال بدي ابقى في تونس وادافع. بالنسبه لي الهروب ليس الحل، ونعرف انا انسان نعرف روحي اذا كان نبعد على تونس نفس الشيء نجم نموت. خليني يعني بدي يموت في تونس احسن من اني يموت برا تونس، افضل البقاء في تونس.
وكنت بسأل عن وانت بتعمل الفيلم يا معاذ، كان في مخيلتك الجمهور الغربي، وازاي هم بيبصوا لنا ان احنا كلنا عايزين نسيب بلادنا ونهرب ونروح لهم وناخد خيرهم والكلام ده، كان في دماغك الجمهور الغربي؟
اكيد كان في دماغي. اكيد كان في دماغي. هما ما نجموش، لن يستطيعوا ان يشعروا بهذا الشيء لانهم في قوانين تحميهم اولا. ثانيا لم يعيشوا نفس الشيء اللي احنا بنعيشه كل يوم. والغربي حتى مثلا لو يجي على البلدان العربيه ويكون مثل الجنس، راح يمارس الجنس ومش راح يصير له شيء، لانه مستحيل يكون يدخل بالسجن، هو بجنسيته بباسبوره راح يكون محمي. لكن مثلا فرضا انا مثلا كوني عم بمارس الجنس مثلا مع شخص انجليزي مثلا، انا راح اكون بالسجن وهو لا. انا راح ابقى بين 3 و5 سنوات بالسجن، وهو من اول ساعه راح يخرج. هذا الفرق. مش راح فيهم يعني يحكموا يقولوا اوكي يحبوا بدهم يخرجوا من بلدهم بس لانه هون احسن وراح يكون عندهم فلوس وكل شيء، لكن مش هذا، مش راح يعيشوا ولا يحسوا بالالم اللي احنا نعيشه كل يوم، ولا الخوف اللي نعيشه كل يوم.
Great. Okay, so to translate Mouad's answer to my question, he talks about for him to leave Tunisia is a form of cowardly escape, and he uses this. He understands that for other people it's a legitimate choice, but for him it's a cowardly escape that he is not capable of performing right now. That he still has a lot of fight in him, and that if he finally leaves Tunisia, it's going to be after the negation of the 230, the Article 230 in the Tunisian Penal Code, which is the article that criminalizes homosexuality. And just for context, this article was not, it actually came into place under the French colonial law of Tunisia. And this is actually a fact for, or true rather, of a lot of countries in the Arab world where obscenity laws and homosexuality laws were enacted under colonial rule. Because again, what people in the West fail to understand sometimes is that under certain eras within Islamic history, there was great acceptance of, there was kind of a peaceful coexistence between non-queer and queer people, if we can just put it in such simple terms. And this panic, this moral panic, was very much a colonial import that and a legacy that we were left with. So Mouad says that he wants to stay in Tunisia until this law is negated, and he says that if he dies, he'd rather die in Tunisia. And he said that he absolutely had a Western audience in mind when making the film, because the West doesn't understand a lot of the privileges that they enjoy. But also he mentioned something about how if a Western queer person is in Tunisia, they are able to perform their sexuality without, there might be scrutiny by society, but they will be safe under the law because they have a passport to protect them, and the law would arrest or punish the Tunisian person who is in a relationship with them and not the Western person. And so he says that the West just seems to think that we want to flee to it and use its resources, when in actuality they come to, a lot of Westerners come to the Middle East or the Swana region and use it as their playground. Mouad, I think I have one more question before we open it up to the audience. I have a question about actually two questions. One about visibility, and you chose, your film is an art house film. It's an art film. However, it's a very accessible art film. It's not. It is rooted in reality. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of had to go into the art film kind of genre in order, again, to navigate the whole thing of visibility and that you cannot be seen. And how does this help your activism? And my second question is about art and activism. To you, do you think art is a form of activism, or or do you think for you activism is an art of and as of itself? And you can choose to answer whichever first.
اوكي. بالنسبه للارت والاكتيفيزم شيئين معناها معناها لازمين. يعني بدون ارت، الان بالنسبه لي نشوف ان الارت يعني هو طريقه دفاع ناجحه جدا. خاطر بالارت فينا نوصل كثير رسائل، وفينا انا بالنسبه لي انا طريقتي مثلا في الاكتيفيزم هي الارت. شخص تاني طريقته انه مثلا يعمل بوست اون فيسبوك ولا سور انستغرام. انا بالنسبه لي الارت، فهمت؟ يعني نستعمل مثلا الصور ولا الافلام ولا الصوت باش نوصل رسالتي، لانه كل شخص عنده رسالته. وانا الراء يوصل يعني يخرج رسالته للعالم بطريقته. انا طريقتي كانت الفيلم والارت. هذا بالنسبه للسؤال الثاني. السؤال الاول شنو كان هو؟
السؤال الأول على فكرة إنه الفيلم بتاعك فيلم ارت هاوس، يعني فيلم فني مش فيلم جماهيري، ما يعتبرش فيلم جماهيري، يعني لازم الواحد يبقى عنده ذوق خاص عشان يتفرج عليه. فهل لجأت لده لأنه أنت بتتكلم لازم صورتك ما تبانش إلى آخره، فده فرض عليك إنه الفيلم يبقى في الاتجاه ده؟
باقي ما فهمتش لم افهم جيدا
فكرة
سؤالك يعني.
رؤيوية، يعني فكرة إن أنت مش موجود في الشاشة، شايفين الصوت بس مش انت جسمك وشك مش موجود. هل ده فرض، يعني بتشوف ازاي فكرة ان انت الفيزيبيليتي والانفيزيبيليتي بالنسبة لك
فهمت.
كاكتيفيست؟
بالنسبة لي هو أولا الطريقة هذه حاجة هذيك اخترت إني ما نوريش وجهي just for my safety. كان فيني مثلا كنت خايف، أنا لليوم نخاف وما زلت نخاف، لكن أيضا حتى بدون ما أظهر وجهي فرحان ومرتاح مع هذا، لأنه لأني ما مثلتش بس نفسي. أنا حتى كي ما ظهرتش وجهي، حتى لم أظهر وجهي، أنا مثلت كتير مثليين. لأنه أي مثلي مثلا يعيش، هم أغلبهم يعيشوا في نفس الظروف اللي أنا نعيش فيها، ويحسوا في نفس الأحاسيس ويفكروا كيفي، حتى تفكيرهم زي. يعني أنا بس ما فكرت بس بحالي، فكرت معاذ هو يعني مش معاد الشخص اللي يحكي معك فقط، هو مجموعة من الأشخاص. يعني هو مجموعة من المثليين. هو يعني أي شخص بده يشوفه راح يشوف حاله فيه. يعني لست مضطر حتى أظهر، لأنه مثلا أي الشخص مثلي اللي راح يتفرج في هذا الفيلم هو يختار يحط وجهه مكاني، راح يتخيل حاله. فهمت؟
ممتاز. Okay, so quickly, just to translate what Mouaad said regarding activism and art. For Mouaad, they are faces to the same coin. For him, the way he performs his activism is through art. Other people might be more into protests, and he does join protests and everything, but his primary or principal way of performing his activism is through art, through photography, through his film, and he has new ideas for new films. Regarding the invisibility and how it kind of dictated a specific form of filmmaking or a film genre. And Mouaad says that although he had to not reveal his identity in the film to protect himself, but artistically it worked well for the film, because any queer person living under the same oppression or laws could identify with the protagonist and the narrator in the film. So by not having his face, he becomes every queer person living under the same circumstances, which I think is a brilliant way to start taking questions, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who want to join in the conversation. So Mouaad, the first question we have is, what is your source of inspiration and strength?
شكون يعني الانسبيراسيون؟ إتس نور.
انت
نور
انت
نور
ايه مصدر الالهام في حياتك والقوة في حياتك؟
اوكي، بالنسبه لمصدر الالهام للفيلم، لاني انا نحب السينما، كان نور.
لا مش للفيلم بس، في حياتك، انك قادر تكمل وقادر تعمل ايه مصدر الهامك وشجاعتك وقوتك؟
اوكي. انت شفت في الفيلم كانوا في كتير قطط.
مم.
القطط اني راهم اصلا اني نحب اولا القطط، لكن اغلب القطط اللي عندي عندهم اعاقات، او يعني قطط هي منبوذه، حتى
مم.
قطط شارع لكن منبوذه.
مم.
مصدر قوتي هو القطط، لانه انا مثلا كي نساعد القطط نقول مثلا في، انا راح نساعده، راح نخرجه من الحاجه اللي هو فيها، راح نعمل له بيت وكل شيء، نشوف حالي انه يمكن انا في يوم آه، يعني في قوه، او انا لا اؤمن بالديانات ولا اؤمن بالاله، لكن نقول مثلا يمكن في يوم من الايام تجيني قوه خارقه مش عارف من وين، تخرجني، تنقذني، تعيشني احسن، ما نعرفش. وحاجه اخرى زاد ريهام، حابب تقول الفيلم بتاعي توا ما زلت ما شفت، لم ارى الفيلم بتاعي في شاشه كبيره لليوم.
أيوة.
اوكي.
Okay, so in regards to Mouad's inspiration and strength, and I personally love his answer because I think Mouad and I are bonding over the love of cats. Even my mug has a load of cats on it. So Mouad says that actually one of his sources of inspiration and strength is cats. And he explains that he rescues cats and especially cats with disabilities that are usually not taken care of or are kicked on the streets. People don't care for them. People don't want to adopt a cat who is that is blind or missing a limb. And Mouad offers shelter for them. He builds homes for them. He takes them to the vet. He even explained that he had savings and he gave the vet all his savings to treat a cat. And for him, it's a metaphor of what he lives for. That he lives for the people who are ostracized in society, in the community, himself included, and he wants a better life for them. And he's hoping that one day what he does for the cats will be a reality for his fellow queer people and anyone who is living an unjust reality. And I think I'm holding back the tears a bit because this is very, very touching. Also, Mouad wanted to tell us that until this day, he has not watched his film on a large screen. He's only seen his film on a mobile phone. His film is traveling the world and it's being, screened in festivals, whether people are, because of the pandemic, watching it from home or. But Mouad himself has not yet been able to watch his film on a large screen, and I'm not going to even comment on that because I think it is very potent and it's self-explanatory. Mouad, another question for you. What are your goals and aspirations for your next creative work?
Well, I have too much idea. Maybe that will be a second part for this film, but we already talked a little bit about this, about that. My next film, it will be maybe about body shaming. راح نحكي لك بالعربية يعني. راح نطلب من الأشخاص ياخذوا صور لأي مكان في جسمهم ما بيحبوه. مثلا شخص، أنا مثلا ما بحب أنفي مثلا، مش عارف، راح أخذ صورة الأنفي، مثلا شخص ما بيحب البوز whatever. وراح نحاول من خلال هذه، أنا مش راح أخذ أي صورة، بدي الأشخاص بحد ذاتهم ياخذوا الصور لجسمهم، فهمت؟ وراح نحاول نجمع هذه الصور وكل شيء ونخرج بها لوحة فنية، وتخليهم يقبلوا جسدهم أكثر ويحبوا جسدهم أكثر. يعني بعد ما يشوفوا الفيلم يكونوا تقبلوا حالهم، يقولوا أوه اتس بيوتيفول، فهمت؟
Okay, so Mouaad has this brilliant idea for his next project, and he wants to make a film about body shaming and the shame people have in their bodies, whether this shame is cultivated from how they've been shamed by society, or whether it's in like they just don't like specific areas or aspects of their bodies. And his way of going about it is that he's going to put a call out for people to send him pictures of parts of their bodies that they're not comfortable with, or that they do not like, or that they just flat out loathe or want to change. And he'll create a collage, and he will try to make a film around that. And I think that one of the other aspirations for Mouaad's work, I think that he would, and at the end of his film, This Day Won't Last, he says at the end of it that he hopes that by the time we screen the film, Article 230 will be negated and will no longer be existent. And I think that this aspiration lives on, that maybe if we keep watching the film, this will be the little charm that makes this article disappear, together with the efforts of the activists on the ground in Tunisia. Mouaad, we have another question about how do you believe that the Swana queers in the diaspora can participate in uplifting the struggles of the community in the region. So to translate this to you, Mouaad, ازاي الناس اللي من المحيط بتاعنا، المحيط العربي او شمال افريقيا الى اخره، اللي عايشين برا، اللي في الشتات، اللي عايشين في الغرب، ازاي يقدروا يساعدوا المجتمعات الكويرية في بلادنا ان هم يكملوا الصراع، وان هم يعيشوا حياة افضل؟ ازاي اللي برا يقدروا يساعدونا؟
يقدروا يساعدونا مثلا اوكي الاعانات، لكن انا نفضل شخصيا الاعانات ما تكونش دائما عن طريق الجمعيات اولا. ثانيا انه مثلا بالنسبه للفصل 230 اللي في تونس، هو فصل عملته فرنسا، ما كانش موجود في تونس، هو فصل عملته فرنسا لاسوديمي اسمه، من عهد الاستعمار عملته فرنسا. مثلا فرنسا بما انه مثلا فرنسا مثلا فيها تضغط على الدوله، حتى الفصل 230 ما يعودش موجود، لانه هو على باز يعني في الاصل فصل فرنسي.
اوكي.
فرنسا هي اللي عملت الفصل هذا. وكما قلت معنا الاعانات تحاول مثلا مش كان الجمعيات، لكن تحاول مثلا نعرفش اني تحاول تعمل تشوف طريقه انه اي مثلي مثلا، انا مثلا اوكي صديق مع العديد من الجمعيات كل شيء، لكن انا نفضل مثلا انا طريقه نضالي هي كما قلت يعني لا التجا لاي جمعيه لاني نحس انه في استغلال في بعض الاحيان. نحس انه الجمعيات تستغل، مش جمعيات الكل في تونس، فما جمعيات باهيه وما نحبش نقول اسامي، لكن فما جمعيات زاده ولات تتاجر بالقضيه، ولات يعني ما نعرفش يعني اصبحت كالتجاره وكهو معناه. مانيش فما جمعيه تتعاون، لكن فما جمعيات مش قاعده تعاون. يعني مثلا حتى كان باش يعطوا فلوس للجمعيه لازم يعرفوا لاي جمعيه يجب اعطاء المال، فهمت؟ لازم يكونوا متاكدين من الجمعيه، لانه مش انا مثلا في جمعيه معروفه بدون لا اذكر اسمها، تبدا متعدي تكون بالشارع ويكون الستايل نتاعك يعني مش عادي، صارت اهانه انه يقولوا اسم هذه الجمعيه ليك. مثلا متعدي اسم الجمعيه مثلا نقولوا معاد، مثلا تبدا متعدي يقول لك معاد، يعني صارت زي السبه، لانه هذه مثلا الجمعيه تعمل الكومين اوت للاشخاص بدون رضاهم. مثلا شخص توقف من قبل تم توقيفه من قبل البوليس، بيقوموا بوضع صورته على الصفحه بدون اعلامه. يعني مثلا حتى عائلته، مثلا عائلته بس تكون تعرف، تصير الدوله كلها تعرف، تصير المجتمع التونسي كله يعرفوا هذا انا ضد، هذا ضد التشهير. يعني حتى لو كان راح يقدموا إعانات لازم يختاروا أي جمعية بدهم يعطوها الفلوس.
في الجمعيات ممكن تسرق تسرق فلوس الإعانات أو حاجات ما تديهاش للناس اللي محتاجينها؟
أعتقد نعم، ليس كل الجمعيات. أنا مثلا في جمعيتين 3 جمعيات بحبهم،
مهم.
أصدقائي، وبحس إنهم يشتغلوا، لكن بحس دائما إنه الشغل ناقص، الاشتغال يعني ناقص شوية. لكن في فقط 3 جمعيات هما، في عديد جمعيات في تونس تدافع عن مثليين. لكن مثلا كي نحكي على جمعيات ما نعرفش اسكو نجم نقول اسمهم ولا لا، I don't know but في 3 جمعيات أنا فخور بالشغل اللي اشتغلوا فيه كتير، لكن الشغل منقوص، وما نعرفش يعني فيني نقول اسمهم أو لا.
طيب هل في أي طرق تانية تحب الناس التوانسة مثلا اللي عايشين بره يساعدوا بيها؟
آه، راح أقول لك شيء واحد يا ريهام. شفت حتى الأكتيفيست اللي يكونوا بتونس ويخرجوا ويغادروا تونس يعملوا
مهم.
لجوء برات الدول، ما بينسوا القضية يعني. فهمت؟ يعني اليوم اللي بيغادروا تونس وتصير حياتهم أفضل أو أي شيء، بيخافوا حتى إنهم يحكوا، ما عاد بدهم يحكوا، يقولوا إحنا حياتنا صارت أحسن، في
مهم.
قوانين تحمينا، مع تونس ما عاد تعني لنا شيء يعني. حتى يوم نرجع لتونس راح نرجع لتونس كأجانب مش كتوانسة. فهمت؟
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so Mouaad talks about what he, if there's anything that the Swana people in the diaspora could do to help the cause back to in their home countries. One thing is, Mouaad says that a lot of people, a lot of Tunisians, for example, who have managed to immigrate, once they leave the country, they completely lose connection with Tunisia and with the different issues that Tunisians are fighting for. And he thinks that this is very disappointing because they start treating themselves as foreigners and they have this complete disconnect. And he says that if the people who have managed to leave lose faith in the people who are still inside, then this creates a terrible disconnect and it's heartbreaking. The other thing that Mouaad says is that a lot of people who in the diaspora, they send money to NGOs and grassroots and civil society organizations to help queer individuals. But he says that whereas this can be a way of helping, especially for the queer individuals who were kicked out of home and don't have a place to live and they need help with that. But he insists that people need to do proper research into these organizations, because there are some organizations that there is corruption and there's some money that gets stolen and does not go to the people that deserve it. But also some organizations, and this is the point that Mouaad wants to stress, some organizations use the queer community for their own goals, and they even use them in the most obscene of ways, like revealing the identity of queer individuals or outing them without their consent in order to get the spotlight on them, to get media attention. And once these individuals get in trouble with the law, these organizations are nowhere to be found to help. The other and the last point that he wants to make is for the Tunisians who live in France to put pressure on the French government to in turn put pressure on the Tunisian government to negate Article 230 because it was borrowed from the French law. And this is the only time where he would ask a Western government to interfere in this regard, because this article was in the French law and was brought to Tunisia with the French. I think that we have one more question, Mouaad, and this is a technical question around your film. Is the format you chose to tell the narrative in your film. So معاذ بيتكلموا على التقنية اللي استخدمتها للفيلم، يعني طريقة الكولاج، ايه طريقة السرد اللي انت استخدمتها علشان تحكي الفيلم، ازاي جمعتوا الصور دي، ازاي عملتوا اديتنج ليها، ايه الفورمات، ايه الستيل، يعني الستيل.
اوكي. في هذا الشيء ما نحكيش فقط على معاذ، نحكيه زاد على نور وعلى ديف وعلى هدى اللي عملت هدى عصفور، عملت الأغنية الميوزيك يعني الموسيقى، وعلى كثير أشخاص آخرين. هذا الشيء كان يعني أنت مثل ما الفيلم يعني لم يصنع في تونس، الصور في تونس لكن العمل لم يكن في تونس، يعني التجميع وكل شيء لم يكن في تونس. نور هي اللي هي لأنها تعرف حياتي. أنا كنت ببعت لها الصور وببعت لها الصوت وببعت لها كل شيء، لكن هي اللي حاولت لأنها تعرف معاذ، حاولت تجمع كل هذا بطريقتها. فهمت؟ ودايف مثلا هو اللي كان حسن شوي في الصوت. يعني هو شغل تاع
دايف
كثير.
في أي بلد؟
في بروكسل في بلجيكا.
ونور؟
في بلجيكا.
اوكي. وهدى؟
هدى في أمريكا وأنا في تونس.
وأنا في تونس. اوكي. وكله كان على الفيسبوك وعلى الكمبيوتر وكده، مش كده؟
الشغل كله حتى لمدة 3 سنوات كله كان على الكمبيوتر، بس لم نلتقي. كنت بس يعني بنحكي على الفيسبوك كل العمل أكثر، لا نستعمل حتى الإيميل، كان كل شيء يعني على الفيسبوك أو الإنستغرام.
Okay.
تجميع وكل شيء.
So the Mouaad explains that he wants to give to make acknowledgements, to acknowledge the effort and the help he received from the different people worked with him on the film. Noor, who is Mouaad's cousin, and she's the producer and editor. Dave, who worked on sound and editing, and Huda, who did the music for the film. And Noor and Dave are in Brussels, and Huda is in the States, and Mouaad is in Tunis. And the four of them did not meet to work on this film. They did not physically meet. They did all the work through on Facebook and email and just online, basically. And this is how the film was put together. So Mouaad provided Noor with the imagery, with the still shots and the videos he took on his camera, on his very old phone, as he explains. And together with Dave, Noor and Dave worked together to make this into a coherent whole through the editing. And with the voice notes and the voice messages Mouaad sent to Noor, she then provided a structure, and he agreed to it because she knows him well, she knows his journey, she knows of his situation at home. So I think it's also fascinating that this film, because we talked, I mean, the theme of the festival as a whole is that queer bodies in motion, and I think it's fascinating that this film was made in 3 different countries, 3 different continents, and it is a film that travels without the people necessarily meeting. Mouaad, we have one last question about funding. How do you finance your projects? And it must be difficult to get any funding from the state. So how do you find money for your projects?
اوكي. الفيلم بتاعي يعني منين الفلوس جبت شنو الفلوس باش خدمته الفلوس يعني. ما كانش فيه فلوس، يعني انه فقط هو حتى يعني كما قلت الصور كان بتليفون قديم سامسونج جي 3 2016، يعني قديم جدا، كانت بكاميرا جيتابل. والصوت يعني ما كان فيه آلات لأنه يعني حتى الأمور يعني المالية حتى لو كان مثلا في حاجة للمال، نور هي اللي كانت يعني بتدفع من جيبها الخاص أعتقد.
مم.
لأنه تعرف إنه الأمور المالية ما حكينا فيها أبدا معناها، لأنه مش عارف أصلا بدون يعني بدون عن جد يعني بدون مال مش عارف كيف يعني صار في فيلم.
Oh,
فهمت؟
okay. 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 So for this particular film, Mouaad explains that he doesn't even know where the money came from because there wasn't much money involved. The shots that he took were with a disposable camera, so a very cheap disposable camera, and then his mobile that he already had. So he didn't need any money to get his photography or the videos. As for any money that was needed to just put the film together, his cousin provided, and he's not sure even how much it was because it was such a low budget film. And I'm going to leave the last words for you, Mouaad. Is there anything else would you like to say before we wrap up?
يس نحب نقول لك إن أنت عايشك، ميرسي بوكو، شكرا. نحب نشكر زاد برشا برشا نور وبرشا ديب وبرشا أصحابي، أي شخص آمن بالفيلم ولا أي شخص يعني ما نعرفش أي شخص حاول إنه يساعد بطريقته، نحب نشكره بالحق. وإني فرحان برشا اللي اليوم معناها يعني رغم الخوف ورغم كل شيء اللي وصلنا معناها نعملوا حاجة، نعملوا فيلم إن شاء الله. الفيلم ينجم يحسن شوية من وضعية المثليين، ولا على الأقل الفيلم ينجم يوصل صوتنا يعني لبرا من تونس.
Great. So Mouaad would like to thank the festival for screening his film and the organizers. He would like to thank his cousin Dave and Huda, everyone who collaborated with him on the film, and everyone who encouraged him to show his film. And he's hoping that this film would just make even if the slightest difference in the situation for queer people, not just in Tunisia or the Swana region, but everywhere around the world. And yes, he's hoping for the best. He's full of hope and he's full of fight. And I think we just have nothing to say more except to thank Mouaad 1,000 times for being with us and for honoring us with his film. It was a pleasure to watch more than once and to talk to you about it. Thank you, Mouaad.
عايشك عايشك. Thank you so much.